Okay, that brings us to the second stage of the relationship arc, mid-game. Mid-game is you have gotten her phone number, Facebook, email, and now you are gaming her, getting her out on a date or several dates, and eventually leading to stage 3, which is endgame. How to mess up mid-game? Well, your text game is poor, or if you want to speak in 20th century language, your phone game is poor. You're not anticipating logistical issues. So, for example, you've got her on the date, but she's living with her parents, and your roommate's home, and you have nowhere to have sex. So you haven't thought about that ahead of time. You fail to escalate on the date, meaning physically escalate to sex, or at least the makeout. Or you set up a really lame date, and the girl's not going to blame the date. You know, the fact that you saw a bad movie, she's not going to blame the movie, she's going to blame you. You, the man. It was your responsibility to set up a fun, effective date. There's really 4 components to mid-game, 4 important ones. Number 1 is text game. 2 is the date itself. 3 is sexualization. And 4 is romance. Let me describe these. Text game is pretty clear, and I've explained it in great detail in my free ebook, Text Game Primer, again available at puafieldguide.com. All these things are possible through text game. It really is a language when you get good at it. You can be fluent in text. But the key for dealing with women is emotional investment on their part. Effective text game is a back and forth of emotions, such that she becomes increasingly invested emotionally to the point she must meet up with you to have these emotions fulfilled. The date. Here are some geezers at a movie date. I've taken girls on movies, dinners, bars, daytime fun like farmer's market. They've hung out with me on errands. Me and my friends met up with them and their friends. There's lots of different contingencies you can work for a date, and you should experiment with all of them. But the only thing I've found to be consistently effective is the bar date. So let me describe this one to you. And of course, there's lots of different ways to do it, but this is my style. I always want to make it low sell for a girl to meet up on a date. So I always want to stay within about 20 minutes drive from her place. I find at about 20 minutes, flaking goes up significantly. They may agree to it, but they usually back out at the last minute. So I want to find a bar close to her. I tend to meet girls around 9 o'clock, give or take, because I don't find girls to be particularly sexy during the day. They feel a lot more sexy at night. I go to a mellow lounge or bar, never a high-energy club or anything where there's going to be too many distractions. Usually the energy is good, it's positive, there's lots of people to watch, there's often a band playing, some blues or jazz. Find a couch in a dark corner and sit there. Buy the first round of drinks and sit there and talk to her. You may escalate a little bit, but hopefully within the first 30 to 60 minutes of the date, you're going to go for the makeout. Because really the whole energy of the date changes once you start making out with a girl. Before the makeout, it's often this weird, awkward first date feeling, but after you make out with a girl, the vibe changes. You can now make out again, you can escalate, you can plan the second date effectively, you can suggest the pull. You can do all these things without the makeout, but it tends to be a little more difficult. 3 and 4 are sexualize and romance. And these really do balance each other out, because if you sexualize an interaction too heavily, then she's going to think all you want is her pussy. If you hit romance too hard without any sexualization, she's going to think that you are a pussy. So you really do need to weave these two together throughout your interaction, really from day one onwards. So first, sexualization. There's 2 ways of doing it. There's explicit and implicit. Explicit's pretty clear, making statements that are sexually explicit, like you're going to fuck her, you want her to suck your cock, and so on. Implicit's a little bit more challenging for guys, but it's probably way more effective. Here's a girl eating ice cream. There's nothing explicit sexually about this. It's completely implicit. It's pretty arousing. So what you want to do during implicit sexualization is make similar comments, things that will fire her imagination. Because in the end, if you just start her imagination and you let her imagination take over, that's probably going to be more powerful than anything you can say, anything out of your mouth that is explicit. So even if it's little grunts or you text or a little winky face, sometimes that's all you need to do to get her wheels spinning. And fourth, the counterbalance to this is romance. So oftentimes I will work in some romance, and then suddenly I'll go to sexualization and back and forth. These two are constantly coming up. Romance is a very important topic, and the community once again does not talk about this at all, but girls really want it. So I'm not sure why they haven't talked about it, but what I did was I took it on myself to do the research. I talked to tons of girls. I read romance novels. I watched romantic movies. I read a lot, and eventually I put together a huge post of all the elements of romance, and I posted it. I believe it's on my blog as well, manschool.cc. But here are 10 of some of the important principles of romance. Attention to details. So she makes a comment. You don't think it's important at the time, but you do take a mental note and you bring it up sometime down the road. Something she wants, you get her as a gift, or a date that's important, you remember. Girls have extremely good memories, and when you are attentive to details, they will find this very romantic. Gestures, for example, pulling out a girl's chair at the table or opening a door. These aren't strenuous activities, of course, but they symbolize your desire to take care of her. So they are in themselves gestures, and as such are very powerful. Conspiracy. For example, you and her create this Bonnie and Clyde kind of situation. You two against the world. The world may try to break up that bond, but it's impossible. It's too strong. And the two of you conspire together. Fourth is the bubble, which is the concept that when you're with the girl and you're talking to her, everything else in the world just kind of melts away. Nothing else exists. Time stops. You have this bubble of love going on between you two. Surprise. The element of surprise probably noted the most by the women I talk to as far as what is romantic. You don't have to give expensive gifts, but you just want to drop them in randomly. Or just send her a random text letting her know you miss her, for example. Just keep surprising her. It's very romantic. Security. Your desire as a man to take care of her as a woman. You don't actually have to take care of her, but as long as your intent is clear, that itself is very romantic. Sacrifice. For example, she wants to go see some shitty movie and you go ahead and see it with her. You're not doing it grudgingly. There's no bad vibes. You're doing it out of the goodness of your heart with just love for her because you are there to share things that are important with her, even though you have to bend a little bit. That itself is a subset of chivalry. And chivalry is the overall concept of being of service to women, taking care of women. The awe factor. So anything, like fluffy bunny rabbits and flower petals on her pillow and all that stuff. The stuff that's usually very nauseating to men. But anything that makes a woman go, "Aw," that's usually romantic. And finally, the just because factor. You're not doing it because you expect sex or any kind of reciprocation. You're doing it just because you care about her and you want to show this